All right, so we're going to be factoring trinomials. We're going to talk about both easy and then like the medium ones. We're not actually going to do the hard ones. Just so you are on the same page, when we're talking about a trinomial and we talk about ABC, the first coefficient is A, which for us is always going to be 1. We're not going to deal with numbers bigger than 1. B is the coefficient in the middle that's on the x, not the x squared. So in this case, it's -3. And C is whatever's the constant term at the end. Okay, it's written like this. You can see, same idea. So we're going to be able to turn this into multiplication. So it's end up being like this. Okay, we need to figure out how we can find this answer from this trinomial. So let's start with some patterns. Looking at these, let's ignore the first one, okay? When we look at these, we need to figure out how do we turn these numbers into these numbers. There's got to be some kind of a pattern. So pause the video for a sec, see if you can see a pattern between the numbers in the answer, because this is the factored form, from the B and the C values. So the idea is, whatever the number at the end is, this C value, is always these two multiplied. If you take 3 and 3, 3 times 3 is 9. If you take 5 and 2, 5 times 2 is 10. If you take -5 and -2, and multiply them together, you get +10. The middle number is the two added together. So if you have 3 and 3, that makes 6. If you have 1 plus 7, it equals 8. If you have -5 plus -2, it's -7. Or if you have a really weird one, you have 8 minus 6, it gives you +2. So the rule of thumb, when you're factoring, you're trying to find whatever two numbers go here so that they will add to the middle term and they will multiply to the final term of your trinomial. So let's do one together. We have our trinomial here. So the way you start is by looking at this 10. Okay, I like writing a 10 here. Now I need to write what numbers multiply to this. Okay, what multiplies to 10 and is +10. So I can say, well, we could do 1 times 10. Okay, or we could do 10 times 1. It's the same thing. We could do 5 times 2. Or we could do 2 times 5. Now, these are all positives, so we can write like pluses for all of them. And then what I'm going to say is the order doesn't really matter, so we don't have to write that. That's really all there is. Okay? So, we now need to pick from these two pairs which ones add to create the 7. So if I have 1 plus 10, that's going to give me 11. And I have 5 plus 2, that's going to give me 7. So this one is correct because it gave me the number that I was looking for. So now what you do, your answer is always going to look the same. It's always going to be the two brackets. You write x's in both at the start because x times x gives you x squared. If this was some different thing, you would write different numbers in the front. Okay. And now I'm going to put the 5, which is +5 here, +5. And I'm going to put the +2 right here. That's it. You find out what multiplies to make the C term, write out the factors, pick which pair adds up to make the middle term, and that's your answer. You just need to put the numbers in, and we're done. You could check the answer by multiplying it out, and it ends up being right. So now, a little tougher one, you got to remember every single question you get for your life, we always common factor first. So when I look at this, instead of saying, oh, what are the factors of 48? There's like a lot. We need to factor. Okay? So when we factor this, there's actually a factor of 2. Factor of 2. So it's going to become x squared plus 2x minus 24. So now that we have our factored version, we're going to just look at this trinomial and ignore the 2. For the rest of the question, the 2 is just going to be sitting there on the side. Okay? So we don't need the third line. Now we can look at this, the -24, and we got to say, okay, what multiplies to make -24? So we're going to write out the numbers. I know you could do 1 and 24. Okay, you could do 2 and 12, and you could do 3 and 6. Sorry, 3 and 8, and you could do 4 and 6. I think that's all of them. The way I usually do it, I go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and as soon as you get to the next number, 5 doesn't work, but 6 that you've already written, you know you've written all the factors. So now we need to figure out. The only thing that's a little tricky is the whole plus minus thing. This is a -24. To make a negative number by multiplying, it's got to be positive and negative, or it could be -1 times +24. Okay, so I'm going to write these all out again, just to show you what I'm talking about. that would be negative, and then -4 or -6. Okay, so we end up having like 8 pairs. So now that we have them all written out, we need to figure out which one adds up to 2. So you don't have to write them. You'll get better as you practice. But this is going to be -23, 25, -10, 14, -5, 5, -2, and 2. Sorry about that. Okay. So we were trying to find +2, so it ended up being this pair right here. You will start to see patterns that will make this a little faster. I know this number's 2, which means I know the factors have to be close together. Obviously the 1s aren't going to work, okay? The 2s aren't going to work. So I would only actually check these ones, which will make it a little bit faster as we go. So I found the correct pair. So what I'm going to do, like before, I write my brackets. I know it's x for both of them, and I'm going to copy these numbers. That -4 goes right here. This 6, which is positive, goes right here, and that's the final answer. Again, we can multiply it out to check, but that's right. Let's do one more. Same basic idea. Okay, this has no common factors, so I can just go straight ahead. I'm going to say, okay, I got factors of 10. So let's write them out. We got 1 and 10. We got 2 and 5. Now be careful. This answer was a negative. The only way we could get a negative answer is if we had negatives involved. Okay, but oh, sorry, this one actually doesn't work. This is supposed to be -10. -10, -10. Okay, there we go. So when it's -10, we know there has to be some negatives involved. So we're going to say, oh, it could also be -1, or it could be -2, okay, to multiply to give us -10. So we got to figure out which pair works, and we write the numbers out. So it's -9, 9. This is -3, this is +3. Cool. Yeah, so when we write these out, we know that the answer is going to be this one, because it was -3, so it'll be x plus 2, x minus 5. Same idea. The only other type of question we need to worry about is the ones where, do this. The ones where it's going to actually look like this. So x squared okay. So again, I'm going to write out the factors for 10. So we're going to have 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. So to make +10, we could do 1 times 10, or we could do -1 times -10, -2 times -5. In this case, we actually have to do this one because -2 plus -5 is -7, which is what we're looking for. So the answer for this ends up being, so the trick is when you have a question that has a negative somewhere, whether it's for the C value or it's for the B value, you need to consider using negatives for different combinations of your factors. When we have questions like the first one that were much more straightforward, where was it? Okay, like this, they were both positive. We only had to do positive factors, so it worked. The last thing, now that I think about this, these numbers are added up wrong. This should be negative. This should be 23. Sorry, I added them wrong. Okay, but same idea. This one was correct. So that's it. The only thing to think about is write out the factors for the third term for C, pick which pair adds up to B value, and those two numbers go into your brackets, and you're done.